Mission Mondays with Pastor Danielle DeNise and Pastor C.C. Mills. We serve the North Carolina Synod of ELCA Lutherans throughout this state. This resource is 12 minutes approximately of mission encouragement, challenging questions, and prayer as you think about how God is calling you to impact your neighborhood for the gospel. Today's episode is called God-ish, led by me, Pastor Danielle DeNise. As we begin together in today's episode, God-ish, whether you're on your treadmill, driving in a car, or simply listening at work, I want to invite you into a breath prayer. I want you to breathe deeply with me, using the phrase, behold the holy. The way a breath prayer works is you use one part of the phrase as you breathe in, behold, and as you breathe out, I want to invite you to say, the holy. Now, I know some of you are thinking, you just said we might be on our treadmills, we can't even breathe, and that's okay. Simply repeat the phrase as we become aware of God's presence among us. Will you pray with me? Behold the holy. Behold the holy. Behold the holy. And now a reading from the 8th chapter of Mark. They came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. And when he had put saliva on his eyes and laid his hands on him, he asked, Can you see anything? And the man looked up and said, I see people, but they look like trees walking. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again, and he looked intently, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Can you see? Can you see? It's this question that fills the gospel at the midpoint. Mark has been filled of fast-paced stories of Jesus's miracles. And just before this, Jesus had fed 4,000 with 7 leftover baskets, and then looks at his disciples and say, can you see it? And you make assumptions like I do. And you expect them to enthusiastically say, yes, we see it all perfectly. And yet in today's miracle, we are reminded about how human the disciples are and how much we are like them. Because here in the Gospel of Mark, another miracle unfolds. There's not an enthusiastic yes, but when asked the question, can you see anything? The man whose saliva is on his eyes, the man whose Jesus has Jesus's saliva, says, well, yes, people that look like trees. What? It's as if someone came to your church and said, can you see God at work? And we said, ish? You know, I've often wondered if we've settled for this halfway healing in our faith communities. We are grateful to have encountered Jesus in a song that soothes our heart or a sermon that speaks to our situation, but we leave Sunday morning saying that felt God-ish. And what's fascinating to me about this story is it does mark the midpoint of the gospel. And as if to signify the midpoint, Jesus and his disciples leave the sea and their boats for the last time. The thing that they have known, their entire identity, is left as they begin the land journey to Jerusalem. Another way to think about this is that they have come to know Jesus, to see him in their familiar surroundings, but to see Jesus with clarity, with full eyes. God is taking them into something unknown. And if you're anything like me, that makes me nervous. Because we like our boats, we like our well-known seas. We don't want something different. And when we settle only for what we've known Jesus to be, our testimony is not a bold proclamation, but is simply God is here-ish. God is risen-ish. God is on the move-ish. But beloved, the love of God is deep, redemptive, and freeing, and we are settling. We're settling to be blind disciples, content with seeing blurry because it means we can remain comfortable. How would you, me, our communities be changed if we had a proclamation that was more than God-ish? And instead, when people encountered us or our faith communities, they encountered the Jesus who placed his hands on this man's eyes and didn't settle for blurred trees or a lukewarm response, but persisted until all could see. Church, I know the temptation to remain comfortable and accept the blurred vision is real. But I also know that Jesus wants more for you, for me, for our communities in this world. So today, I want you to ask Jesus to help you see. If it feels blurred or confusing, ask Jesus to touch your sight a third, a fourth, a fifth time, because Jesus' love and perseverance will bring you clarity. And so here are my questions. Where do you need God to provide clarity today? Where have you settled for comfort over a new season of faith? Where is God calling you to notice or see today? Where and what testimony are you giving with your life? Do your friends, your neighbors, or even your family hear God-ish or something more? And who might God want you to share your faith with this day? Beloved, our God is more than an ish. Our God has overcome death and the grave. Our God has taken grief and provided hope as its companion. Our God has given us unending love. So let us be bold to not simply say to a tired and exhausted world that our faith in our God is ish, that our God has the power to transform their weariness, their confusion, their blurred vision, and make you whole. I want to leave you with a final blessing from Walter Brueggemann's prayers for our privileged people. It's a prayer that I have found myself returning to over and over again when I am longing for the boat and the seas and comfortable with my blurred vision. It's a prayer that reminds me always that there is more Jesus to know and more God to discover, and we are being called to follow. The prayer is called Blown by God Toward Newness. The news is that God's wind is blowing. It may be a breeze that cools and comforts. It may be a gust that summons you to notice. It may be a storm that blows you where you've never been before. Whatever the wind is in your life, pay attention to it. And the blessing of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit will abide with you always. Thank you for joining us for On Mission Mondays. Check out next week when Pastor Cece explores what it means not just to see, but to hear God as well. You can find additional resources on nclutheran.org. And remember, beloved, we see with clear eyes all for the sake of the world.